Hi there, I'm Marceline. At my sister's birthday party, they sat me near the bathroom, on purpose. And when she looked over and smirked, I knew exactly where I stood in that family. But the truth? That wasn't the beginning. They'd been cutting me out for years, quietly. A trust fund in her name, a vacation home in mine, but paid for with my money. What do you do when the people who raised you rewrite the story without you in it? Stay with me. This one runs deeper than it looks. I parked my car 2 blocks away, mostly because every spot in front of the house was taken, but partly because I needed a moment, just a few minutes to sit with the quiet hum of the engine and collect myself before walking into yet another family event where I'd be treated like a placeholder. Serafina's birthday parties had always been productions. This one was no different. The sun was already low, spilling gold over the colonial rooftops of Savannah. I checked the time, 6:48 p.m., late, but not unforgivably so. The invitation, if you could call it that, was a mass group text from our mother. Serafina's big day this Saturday. Hope you can swing by? Swing by. Not please come, not it would mean a lot, not even a direct message. Just a digital shrug tossed into a group chat. I waited for a follow-up from Serafina. Nothing came. I stepped out of the car in heels that were slightly too ambitious and made my way up the cobblestone sidewalk. The Odella family home stood proudly, with its wraparound porch and rose-colored hydrangeas, every inch curated to match Mother's taste in Southern perfection. The kind of house where linen napkins were ironed, not folded. Inside, the air was filled with vanilla candles and the faint sound of jazz piano. It was elegant. Coldly so. A server swept past with a tray of miniature crab cakes, and I caught a glimpse of Serafina, already holding court near the fireplace in a satin champagne gown. Her hair curled just right, her laugh a little too practiced. She didn't see me, or maybe she did and chose not to react. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder and moved further into the room, eyes scanning the sea of sequins and polished loafers. I recognized cousins, neighbors, people I barely knew but who always seemed to be at these things. No one looked my way, except for Aunt Lorraine, who gave a vague nod and turned back to her wine. "Marceline?" a voice said, distracted. I turned. It was Nolan, our cousin on Mom's side, holding a toddler in one arm and typing on his phone with the other. "Hey, glad you made it." "Thanks," I said. He turned away before I finished the word. I walked toward the table with the seating chart, expecting to at least find my name somewhere near family. I looked once, twice. Nothing. Anxiety bubbled. I scanned again. No Marceline, no M. Odella, nothing resembling me. "Excuse me?" I asked a young woman in black with a clipboard. "I think my name might have been left off the chart." She smiled tightly, too practiced. "Name?" "Marceline Odella." She scanned her list, her lips pursed. "Ah, yes, right this way." She led me through the main room, past the dining hall, and toward the back corridor near the restroom hallway. The walls here were less adorned. Fewer candles, no music, just a small square table, no centerpiece, no place card, next to the coat rack. I blinked. "This is mine?" "Yes, ma'am." I stared at the lonely chair like it might change shape if I willed it hard enough. A muffled toilet flush came from the guest bathroom nearby. For a second, I almost laughed. It felt like a sitcom, except the joke was entirely on me. I turned my head instinctively, and across the room, through the open archway, I saw Serafina. She was talking to someone, her hand poised mid-gesture. Then she looked up, saw me, and smirked. Not a smile. A smirk. Like she had just confirmed something she suspected all along, that I didn't belong, not even tonight. My stomach sank. I looked down at the sad little table again, and something in me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet internal shift, like a picture finally tilting off a crooked nail. I didn't sit down. Instead, I walked past it, deeper into the house, clutching my purse tighter. Not to leave, but because for once I wasn't going to accept the seat they gave me. I didn't head toward Serafina. That would have been too easy to predict. Instead, I walked slowly around the perimeter of the main room, as if I had something, anything, to do. My hands found a flute of champagne from a passing tray, mostly to give them a reason to stay busy. The lighting in the house had shifted. Candles flickered in every corner now, and the sound of soft jazz had picked up a notch, probably to mask the increasing volume of chatter. I moved carefully through the living room, eyeing the guests. Silver, gold, satin, sequins. Everyone glowed, except me. The dress Serafina told me would be totally fine for the evening, a light blue cotton wrap with a vintage brooch, stood out like a mistake. No shimmer, no shine, not even a hint of coordination with the party's aesthetic. I heard a whisper behind me. Oh, bless her heart, she probably thought it was casual. Another voice laughing softly. Well, Serafina did say she told her it'd be low-key. You know how she is. My fingers clenched around the champagne glass. I didn't turn around. I just kept walking. Near the fireplace, guests were clustered in semicircles like satellites orbiting my sister. She was telling a story, something about getting upgraded to first class on a flight to Aruba. And everyone hung on her words like gospel. I caught snippets between sentences, and I told the flight attendant if I don't get a window seat, I'm going to scream. And she did it. Just like that. Laughter, admiration, not a single glance in my direction. I slipped past them toward the dining room, where the gift table stood under a huge arrangement of white orchids. I placed my small package near the back corner, not because I wanted to hide it, but because the other gifts were wrapped like art exhibits. Mine didn't stand a chance. It was a simple frame. Inside was a drawing we'd made together when we were kids. Serafina had drawn our dog. I had written both our names in crayon. I'd kept it all these years, cleaned it up, pressed it behind glass. It wasn't expensive, but it meant something, or so I thought. I had just stepped back when someone shouted from the other room, "It's time for gifts!" A wave of guests migrated toward the table. I stayed back, halfway tucked by the doorframe. Serafina began unwrapping them with the same grace she used to peel off price tags at department stores. Slow, performative, delighted. "Oh my God, this is gorgeous," she gasped, holding up a designer clutch. "From Thomas? Stop. He has taste." Everyone clapped. Then her fingers reached my package. She hesitated, pulled at the string, slipped out the frame. A beat of silence. Then came the laugh, soft at first. "Oh, wow, this is vintage?" More laughter. A few murmured awes, like I'd just handed her a drawing from a preschooler. She held it up for the crowd to see. "You guys, this is from when we were, what, 5? Look at those teeth." The smile she wore wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. A woman beside her leaned over and whispered, "That's sweet." "Sentimental," Serafina replied, already moving on to the next box. "Not exactly my current vibe, but sweet." She pulled the tissue paper from a red Dior box. "Now this is a gift." Everyone gasped in unison. I turned away. The sting in my chest wasn't from the gift itself. It was from the fact that she'd known exactly how that would land, and she'd still done it, in front of everyone. I wandered toward the back of the house where the windows opened onto the patio. From there, I could still hear the giggles and praise trailing after Serafina's voice. I passed Mom by the drinks table, her arm hooked around a guest's, laughing at some joke I hadn't heard. "She always had such flair," Mom said, eyes shining. "Even when she was little, she'd walk into a room like she owned it." Dad sat in a corner chair, scrolling through something on his phone. He didn't even glance up as I passed. I took a breath, slow and measured, and stepped out onto the patio. The air was cooler now, laced with the scent of night jasmine and lemon oil from the citronella candles. I leaned on the railing. Behind me, the door creaked open. I turned. Serafina. Her silhouette framed by golden light, champagne in one hand, the Dior clutch in the other. We locked eyes. She didn't say a word, just smiled. It wasn't the casual smirk from earlier. It was deliberate, like she'd just moved a pawn on a chessboard and was watching me calculate the next move. I let my lips curve upward. Not a real smile. Something tighter, quieter. I wasn't playing her game anymore. I turned away from her smile, moving through the crowd like I had a destination, though I didn't. I just needed to walk, to do anything that didn't involve standing still while everyone else clapped for someone who had just gutted me with grace. Near the kitchen entrance, I spotted the gift table again. My steps slowed. I scanned the spread of wrapped boxes and luxury bags, carefully arranged for visibility. Something felt off. The frame I had placed there earlier, our childhood drawing, was gone. I blinked, stepping closer. No sign of it. Not beneath the silver ribbons, not leaning behind the oversized Gucci bag someone had clearly wanted front and center. I flagged a staff member near the hallway. "Hi, sorry. Do you know if one of the gifts was moved? A picture frame in brown paper?" She hesitated just for a second, then smiled politely. "Mrs. Odella asked us to set a few things aside that didn't match the aesthetic." "The aesthetic," I repeated, though it wasn't really a question. She motioned toward the side hallway, the one that led to the mudroom. "It's just on the shelf in there, ma'am." I didn't thank her. I just walked. The hallway smelled of lemon oil and lavender spray, probably pumped in to keep the house smelling like money. There, on a metal shelf between a mop bucket and a stack of bottled water, sat my gift, still wrapped, still untouched. I stared at it for a long time. Not out of surprise. I had passed that stage 2 chapters ago in this family story. But to let the moment register, I wasn't a misstep anymore. I was being managed, curated out of the frame. A door creaked behind me, and I turned my head just enough to glimpse movement. Someone hurrying past, pretending not to notice me. Back in the main room, the piano music had softened into something jazzy. I paused just outside the hall, watching as my mother laughed too hard at someone's joke and adjusted her pearls like a stage cue. For a second, I saw myself as if I were a stranger walking into this life for the first time. And then the past came roaring back, uninvited. Serafina had always been the one to shine. Even as kids, when she drew a sun, it had rays. When I drew one, it had geometry. I remembered the time she faked a science project in 8th grade. She'd stayed up watching TV, and around 10, panicked because she forgot it was due the next day. I helped her build it from scratch, used shoeboxes and foil, wrote the hypothesis myself. She got an A+. Mom smiled proudly and said, "Serafina's always been so independent." I got grounded that same week for not doing the dishes, the same pattern every chapter. I reached for my phone, mostly for a distraction, and swiped through emails until one name stopped me: Lana Jacobs. That name hadn't crossed my mind in years. She'd been the admissions director at a study abroad program in Paris. I never applied, but I'd once written a glowing professional reference for someone else who did, someone who used my resume to frame her own story. That someone, apparently, had been Serafina. I overheard the end of a conversation between 2 women near the drinks table, and Serafina said her sister helped her get into that French design program, remember? What a story. "She said Marceline practically coached her through the interview," the other replied. My mouth went dry. I had never coached anyone. I didn't even know she applied. I only remembered lending her my laptop for a weekend and coming back to find my folders rearranged, so she'd used my words, my experience, my reputation, to get somewhere she never even told me about. And all these years later, she was still spinning me as a supporting character. I stepped onto the patio again, my lungs tight. I needed air. Just a few seconds where no one was talking, no one was laughing like this was just a southern cocktail hour instead of a curated theater of lies. My phone buzzed in my hand, an alert from the property management app, one I hadn't seen pop up in a while. The subject line read, "Final statement available, Clearwater property account." I clicked it. There, in black and white, were 5 years' worth of invoices, payments, transfer logs, each one with my name on it. Final total paid to date, $228,673.41. I stood there, silent. Not just for the number, but because it hit me. While I was writing checks, someone else was rewriting history. I didn't move at first. The number stared back at me, glowing from the screen like a quiet betrayal. $228,000 and change, all in my name. I slipped the phone back into my purse with more care than it deserved. Suddenly, the laughter inside felt louder, the air thicker. This wasn't just a party anymore. It was a parade of masks, and I had walked in without one. Back in the hallway, everything shimmered. Chandeliers sparkled overhead like they were mocking me. Guests sipped champagne, exchanged stories about lake houses and custom cabinetry, as if struggle was something people had only read about in novels. I drifted along the edges of the room. Someone laughed about choosing between Aspen or Jackson Hole for the holidays. Another woman gestured with her ring-heavy hand, complaining about how her third contractor just couldn't match marble veins the way she wanted. It was all noise. None of it felt real. My mother spotted me near the hallway arch and waved me over. Her bracelet clinked softly against her wine glass as she linked arms with a man I didn't recognize. "Darling," she said too sweetly, "come here for a moment. I want you to meet someone." I stepped forward slowly, already feeling the tension coil behind my ribs. "This is Charles," she said, practically beaming. "He's a dear friend of the family." Charles looked well into his 60s, thick glasses, loafers that cost more than my rent, and a pinky ring that caught the light every time he moved. He gave me a slow once-over. "She's lovely," he said to my mother, not even bothering to speak to me directly. "You didn't say she was still single?" I blinked. Mom giggled. "She's quite the catch, isn't she? I keep telling her, don't wait too long. Smart women like her need balance." He nodded sagely, then added, "I'm still available, you know." The people around us chuckled. My cheeks flamed, but I didn't flinch, not even an inch. Instead, I turned slightly toward him and said, "I'm more into financial partnerships than charity cases, but thank you for the offer." A few people laughed, uncomfortably this time. My mother's smile froze just long enough for me to see it crack. I walked away. I didn't need to hear more. I knew that setup wasn't innocent. It never is. They wanted to humiliate me under the veil of good intentions, just trying to help, they'd say. But what they really wanted was for me to shrink, and I wasn't going to. I needed space. So I took the long hallway leading toward the side parlor, the one with the antique mirrors and velvet drapes. That room was quieter, less curated, probably meant for overflow coats and gossip too juicy for public ears. That's when I heard her voice. "Verena." "I told her," she said, low and sharp. "Serafina, you shine best when you're not competing." Let her sit back. She's already fading. I stopped just short of the doorway, heart thudding. "I mean," Verena continued, "you walk in a room and people look. She walks in and you have to squint. It's not the same energy." Serafina gave a small laugh. "You're not wrong," she replied. "I just don't want it to look too obvious." "Oh, honey," Verena said, "it's not about looking obvious. It's about owning the space. Marceline doesn't know how to take up space. That's the difference." I pressed my palm against the wall. That was it. That was the truth I'd been circling all night. It wasn't about me not trying hard enough. It was never about effort or timing or me not showing up. They just needed someone to reflect back their shine, and I was the perfect dim surface. I waited until Verena left the room before stepping inside. Serafina was still there, standing by the fireplace, checking her lip gloss in the mirror. She saw me in the reflection and turned, startled. I smiled. Not the kind of smile that says I forgive you, the kind that says I see you now. I walked up slowly, close enough for her to hear every word over the soft jazz spilling in from the hallway. "You might want to be careful with people who know your whole story." Her eyes widened, just a little. Her lips parted. But for once, she had nothing to say. She blinked, fast, like a camera flash resetting, but the rest of her face stayed still. That tension in her mouth, the way her shoulders subtly pulled back. I saw it. She was thrown off balance, even if just for a second. I turned and walked away before she could recover. The party had shifted again, this time toward the dining room. Candlelight had deepened to amber. Waiters carried in trays of champagne for the upcoming toasts, and soft instrumental versions of 80s hits floated beneath the clatter of glassware. I moved along the edge of the room, half hidden behind tall centerpieces and fake smiles. I wasn't interested in speeches or cake. I needed the truth. "Didn't think we'd see you here," a voice said, half whispered. I turned. It was Paul, one of our distant cousins, technically my father's second cousin, but he never missed an Odella gathering if the champagne was good. "You're not usually invited to these, huh?" he added, sipping his drink, "especially after what happened with the will draft." "What?" I asked, my voice sharper than I expected. He raised an eyebrow. "Oh, sorry, I just assumed you knew. My bad. I guess it's changed since then, right? I mean, you're back on it?" I couldn't speak. My mouth went dry. He laughed awkwardly, backing away. "Forget I said anything. Too much wine." I didn't follow him. I couldn't. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me. Back on it? I hadn't even known I was off. I slipped away from the chatter and found a corner behind the drink station, half shadowed by a tall floral arch. I took my phone out, pulled up the shared family document link from a year ago, an estate outline my mother once emailed in error, thinking she'd forwarded it to my father. I scanned it quickly. My name wasn't there, not as a beneficiary, not even as a contingency. My sister's name? Listed twice, once under the Odella Vacation Estate, once under a trust account labeled Family Legacy Primary. I leaned against the wall. It wasn't just about money. It never was. It was the sentence no one ever said but constantly lived by. "You're not really one of us." I tried to breathe. My ribs barely moved, and it hit me. Not just the will, not just the frame in the hallway, not even Serafina's smirk, all of it. Years of being left out of photos because I was coming later, of being assigned to guest rooms while Serafina got the one with the view, of finding out about family vacations after the pictures went up. Being the reliable one always meant being the invisible one, and I was done. The bar was clearing out. People were heading to the parlor where speeches and cake were about to happen. Serafina stood at the center, perfectly lit under the chandelier, holding a fresh glass of rosé. Her hair was still perfect. Her smile had returned. I walked over slowly, not rushed, not angry. She spotted me and raised an eyebrow. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I haven't," I said calmly. "Just stopped pretending I didn't." She gave a short laugh. "Okay, dramatic much?" I stepped closer. "I didn't change, Serafina," I said, my voice steady but quiet. "I just stopped pretending." Her expression froze. "Pretending what?" "That this is normal, that I belong in this circus just because I share your last name." People were turning. Heads began to tilt in our direction. Someone near the drink station whispered, "What's going on?" Serafina glanced around, her smile faltering. She tried to whisper, but her voice cracked. Are you trying to ruin this?" I looked her directly in the eyes. No malice, just the truth. I'm just not helping you fake it anymore." I watched her walk away, heels sharp against the marble, trying to salvage grace in front of the guests. But I didn't follow. I didn't chase. Not anymore. Let her sweat. The murmurs rose and fell behind me like a shifting tide. Some people turned back to their drinks, others stole glances. I drifted toward the edge of the parlor just in time for another round of champagne to be passed around. That's when Verena found me. She moved like she always did, calm, quiet, confident, like nothing ever touched her. "Impressive," she said, taking a glass. "I didn't think you had that in you." I didn't reply. She wasn't finished. "Of course," she added, sipping. "I guess I shouldn't be surprised. You are the sister after all, and with Harlan setting up that $1 million account for Serafina before the baby, well, I imagine that would get under anyone's skin." I stared at her. "The baby?" I asked slowly. She blinked, then smiled like it slipped. "Oh, you didn't know?" I didn't answer. "And the trust fund," she continued, as if offering a casual weather update. "It's smart, really. Shields it from inheritance tax. I think it's already been set up. Harlan wanted her secure in case the marriage doesn't work out." I wasn't breathing. She winked and floated away. My hand gripped the stem of the champagne glass so tight I thought it might snap. I placed it down, carefully, and turned. My father had made Serafina a millionaire behind closed doors, not just through inheritance, a literal, active transfer of generational wealth, because she might become a mother. I wasn't even told, and I was the one who'd been footing bills on a house none of them even visited unless it was vacation season. I made my way out to the foyer, past 2 guests laughing about golf scores. My phone buzzed again. Emails, notifications. I ignored them all, pulling up my banking app. I found the monthly charges for Clearwater, maintenance, utilities, property tax, auto-drafted from my account. Every single month. I scrolled through years of payments. It hit me like ice. The reason that house still stood, pristine and pretty, was because I kept it that way. Not anymore. I sat down on the small bench by the front staircase, took a deep breath, and opened the property management app. A few taps brought up the service account. One more tap opened the automated billing section. I typed slowly, with precision. Subject: termination of financial responsibility, Clearwater residents. Message: effective immediately, I will no longer cover maintenance, utilities, or tax payments related to the Clearwater property. Please direct all future invoices to Harlan Odella or the Odella Family Trust. Thank you. Marceline Odella. I hit send. I wasn't done. Next, I opened my legal contact folder and pulled up the email for the family estate attorney, the same one who helped draft the original maintenance agreement. I typed again. Subject: legal notification, financial withdrawal. Message: as of today, I am removing myself from any financial or custodial responsibilities regarding the Odella vacation home in Clearwater. Please revise any documentation accordingly and confirm that I am no longer bound to future expenses or liabilities. Marceline Odella send. It was silent when I looked up. The chandelier glimmered above the entryway like it always had. But something had shifted. This time it was mine. I stood and reached for my keys. Then the phone started ringing. First it was Mom, then Dad, then Serafina, then all 3 again. I watched the screen light up in cycles of the people who always expected me to answer, to fix, to pay, to absorb the blow and smile through it. I turned the phone face down. I walked toward the door, and right before I stepped outside, I whispered to no one in particular, "Your move." My phone was already buzzing before I opened my eyes. Dozens of missed calls, even more texts. One from Dad sat at the top like a blinking warning light. "We need to talk. Immediately." I didn't reply. Instead, I walked into the kitchen, made myself coffee, and let the notifications pile up. The sun had barely cleared the oak trees outside my window, casting long shadows across the tile. The air felt still, but beneath it everything was trembling. They were spiraling, and they were doing it fast. At 9:06 a.m., the family group chat exploded. Serafina: "Wow, you really couldn't help yourself, could you? Not even for one night." Mom: "You humiliated your sister on her birthday. Everyone was talking. Are you proud of yourself?" Dad: "I wish you'd come to me first. We could have talked privately." I stared at the screen. Then I opened my files. I took a screenshot of my last 5 years of payments toward the Clearwater property, maintenance, tax, landscaping, all labeled, all time-stamped, all mine. Then I sent the image. No caption, no explanation. Silence followed. No one responded for exactly 3 minutes. Then came Mom again. "Mom, this doesn't justify last night." Serafina: "You've always been jealous. It's exhausting." Verena: "Classless, really, but I suppose that's your thing." I almost laughed. They still thought I was playing defense, but this wasn't reaction. It was revelation. At 10:12 a.m., the call came in. A group video invite. Dad, Mom, Serafina, and, somehow, Verena. Of course she'd show up uninvited. She'd been controlling the stage so long she assumed she owned the theater. I answered. The screen flickered, then settled. Dad looked tired. Mom was already in tears. Serafina had her arms crossed, lips pursed. Verena, perched beside her like a smug shadow. "We're here to talk like adults," Dad began. I sipped my coffee. "You mean now that your secret accounts are out?" I said calmly. "Now that the beach house payments dried up?" Verena raised her eyebrows. "Let's keep this civil." I tilted my head. "You're worried about tone now?" Serafina slammed a hand on the table. "You blindsided us." "No," I said. "I stopped covering for you. Big difference." "You don't get to dictate this family," Mom snapped. "I wasn't trying to," I replied, "but I'm not paying to be disrespected anymore." Dad interjected, voice strained. "You should have come to me." "I did," I said. "Every time I showed up, paid the bills, stayed quiet. That was me coming to you." Verena leaned in. "What's this really about, Marceline? The dress code? The seating chart?" I nodded slowly. "That," I said, "and the gift you shoved in the closet, and the comment about me fading. You remember that one, Verena?" Her expression twitched. Serafina shot her a glance. "I didn't mean," Verena began. "I know exactly what you meant," I cut in. "But here's the thing. I was never trying to compete. I just existed. That's what made me inconvenient." A silence fell, and then, from the left corner of the screen, another voice. It was Karen, our cousin's wife, who must have been listening on another feed. "I overheard Verena in the hallway," she said, blunt. "She told Serafina not to share the spotlight." Verena's face drained. "She said Marceline should be kept in the background, that it's better when the story is clean." The call went dead quiet. I leaned in just slightly. "I was never in your way," I said softly. "You just hated that I didn't need your approval." Serafina's face contorted, her voice sharp. "You're ruining everything." "No," I said, feeling something inside me unlock for the first time. "I'm just done playing the part you wrote for me." Then I reached for the screen and clicked, "Leave call." The air smelled different near the coast. 3 days had passed since the party, but I still hadn't answered a single call. I left the family group chat on mute, moved emails to a folder called For Later, and kept walking, every morning, every evening, by the shore a few blocks from my apartment. The tide rolled in like clockwork, unbothered, unchanging. I watched a gull circle over the water, sharp and silent. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. The rest of the world, it seemed, had no idea that mine had been ripped up and reorganized like a file cabinet dumped across the floor. My phone rang again. Dad. I let it buzz through the first time, then again. On the third try, I answered. There was no background noise, no wind, no music, not even the rustling of paper. "Marceline," he said quietly. I waited. "I didn't think you'd want to be involved," he added. I closed my eyes. The words weren't new, they were just recycled silence, dressed up as an excuse. "You didn't think I mattered enough to ask," I replied. There was a pause, a long one. "You're right," he said. It wasn't dramatic. No begging, no justification. Just 3 small words that settled into my chest like a brick. "I'm sorry," he added. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. I didn't need to hear more. I didn't need an explanation that started with, "It was easier this way," or "Your sister needed more help." We were past that. When the call ended, I stood on the sand for a while longer, letting the wind pull my sweater tight around my body. It was a strange thing, being both full and hollow at the same time, like I'd just finished something enormous, and now all that was left was air. By afternoon, I was back at my desk, a list open in front of me. Tasks, accounts, names. I began with the property management company. Subject line, termination, no further involvement. Then I opened the shared family document on my cloud drive, the one where I'd uploaded vacation house receipts, booking dates, property maintenance logs, delete, delete, delete. Then I went into the family financial platform, leave account, confirm. Another message to the Odella estate attorney. I will not be participating in future administration, financial contributions, or estate management decisions. Please remove me from all group correspondence moving forward. Click. The silence that followed felt earned. That night, as I curled into my couch with a blanket and leftover tie, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Serafina. It was long, over a dozen lines. "You've always made things harder than they had to be," it began. "All you ever had to do was show up and not make everything about yourself. But fine. You win. I hope it was worth it." I didn't respond. An hour later, another text came in. Short, cold. "I'm pregnant, in case you care." My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed, "I hope the baby gets treated like a whole person," then stared at it, and deleted it. Instead, I pulled up the thread with my attorney and typed something simpler. Cleaner, final. "Close everything. Thank you," I sent it, then set my phone face down. And finally, exhaled. I moved the new chair into the corner by the window, the one that caught the late morning light just right. It wasn't anything extravagant. Soft, light gray, with wide arms and a deep seat I could tuck my legs into. I'd seen it at a local boutique weeks ago, walked past it twice, then circled back. It wasn't on sale. I bought it anyway. It wasn't about the chair. It was about claiming space. Finally, just for me. The rest of the apartment was still familiar, the bookshelves lined with memories I actually wanted to keep. A framed photo from college, a record player, a small tray of stones I'd collected from every beach I'd visited alone. I didn't need much, but I needed it to be mine. Later that evening, I sat with a cup of mint tea, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside. The windows were cracked just enough to let in a warm breeze, and I had jazz playing low in the background. Nothing dramatic, just a soft piano melody that didn't rush me anywhere. On my lap was a leather-bound notebook I hadn't touched in years. Not for journaling, too confessional. I used it for drafting letters I never sent. I opened to a fresh page and started writing. "Dear Dad," it began. I told him about the first time I saw him cry, when Grandpa died. How I'd stood next to him, unsure if I was allowed to speak. How I waited for him to notice that I was grieving too. I reminded him of the day I graduated and how he shook Serafina's hand like she'd earned the degree. And how I sat with that for over a decade, convincing myself it wasn't personal. Then I wrote, "I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but silence is its own kind of choice." I closed the notebook before the ink could dry, then flipped to a new page. "Serafina," I wrote. My hand hesitated, but eventually the words came anyway. "You've always known how to draw the spotlight. That was never the issue. It's how you made sure no one else could stand beside you without getting scorched. And maybe, deep down, you thought it was just survival. Maybe someone made you believe love had to be earned in applause. I get that now. But I won't be collateral for your narrative anymore." I stopped, looked at it, then tore the page out. Some things don't need to be sent. Some truths are just for release. That night, while brushing my teeth, I noticed the blinking voicemail icon. One new message, from Mom. I almost deleted it. But curiosity won. Her voice cracked on the second sentence. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "But we're still your family, okay? I know we got things wrong. I know I didn't always stand up for you. I don't want this to be permanent." There was a pause, then softer. "This hurts." I set the phone down. Tears came, but quietly, like a slow drizzle, not a storm. I didn't call her back. The next morning was a Sunday. No alarms, no demands. I brewed coffee, cracked 2 eggs into a pan, and toasted sourdough. I ate on the balcony, book in one hand, jazz playing again from my phone. A neighbor across the way waved. I smiled back. It was the first weekend in years that didn't feel borrowed. There was nothing big to prepare for, no performance to rehearse, just time, and the simple, stunning truth that I wasn't waiting to be invited anymore. I looked back inside, at the living room I'd rearranged, each item placed with intention. The new chair waited for me like a soft exhale. I settled into it that afternoon, mug warm in my hands. The sun stretched through the window, brushing my skin like permission. They could keep their table, because for the first time in my life, I had a seat of my own. Sometimes, the hardest seat to claim is the one we set for ourselves. Marceline didn't ask for revenge, she asked for respect. And when it wasn't given, she did the bravest thing of all. She walked away without shouting, without burning anything down, just quietly choosing herself for once. Maybe you've felt like the background character in someone else's story. Maybe you've been the one placed near the hallway, hoping someone would notice. So here's the question. What would happen if, instead of waiting for space, you made your own? Let us know in the comments. Have you ever had to walk away to protect your peace? And if Marceline's journey spoke to something in you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We have more true-to-life stories coming that just might make you feel seen. See you in the next chapter.